Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar with four great producers from Austria. We are going to give everyone just a few more seconds to join and get settled in, and then we'll begin our webinar about the biodynamics and the movement of respect. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to have a conversation about biodynamics and the movement of respect. I'm here with four of the top producers in Austria. One of the things I wanted to emphasize today is that all of these producers, while they are biodynamics is a very important part of their farming philosophy and their approach to wine production. And these are also four what I would consider elite producers in the Austrian wine scene. And so let me do some introductions here to begin. My name is Jesse Becker, Master Sommelier, and I work for the import company Winebow. And we're very pleased to have these four producers, as well as a few who are not here today, as part of our Austrian portfolio. Beginning with Fred Leumer. Fred, thank you for joining us. Fred is coming to us from Langenlois, which is the main winemaking town of the Kamptal region of Austria, and really one of the leaders in the biodynamic movement in Austria and one of the great producers of the Kamptal. And we also have Fritz Wieninger here today. Fritz is the leading producer of Vienna. That should be a webinar all its own, just the incredible vineyards and wine scene of Vienna. But certainly, Fritz, you're one of the top producers there, and we want to hear your story about how you came to work in the biodynamic way and to join the Respekt group. We have Gernot Heinrich. Gernot is here from Gols in the Burgenland region of Austria. Great red wines, but also fantastic white wines, and really has evolved to a great natural wine producer. So thank you for joining us, Gernot. And also we have Alex Sattler, one of the newest members of the Respekt group. Alex, welcome. Alex is joining us from Gamlitz in the Südsteiermark region, so southern Austria near the Slovenian border, and definitely one of the top producers there. So welcome, and welcome everyone. We want to encourage your questions that you might have about biodynamics. So I'll be monitoring the Q&A. So please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A, and we'll read those throughout and try to get some answers for you throughout the presentation. And I think what we wanted to do to begin is to just kind of course, give you an idea about biodynamics and what it is, and maybe I'll take that first part of the presentation here just to kind of give us an overview of the concept. But it is a system of organic farming, first of all, and biodynamics, of course, there's no pesticides or herbicides here. It is organic farming, but of course there's things that are unique to biodynamics that sort of goes beyond organic farming. One of those I already mentioned. This is what I wanted to have Gernot speak about a little bit today, but one of the concepts here is that the farm is a closed system. So the farm being a sustainable sort of unit. And my example here is that, of course, a farm produces crops, but oftentimes we have in biodynamic farming animals, very important to the system. So we use some of the crops to, of course, then feed the animals, which then produce manure, so we can produce compost, which we then fertilize the crops with. So this is kind of the concept, is that it's this very sustainable cycle. Yep, well, one of the concepts here is that they harness the cosmic energies. This is one of those things about biodynamics that sort of can sound like pseudoscience until you sort of think about how things were done by our ancestors hundreds of years ago, they would do things like following the cycle of the moon, and you can still find these kinds of things in a farmer's almanac. So there's some real, might be pseudoscience to some, but there is actually some science to this as well. And then one of the other things is that I don't have bullet pointed here, but I'll have Alex speak about this soil health and biodiversity. This is usually very important to most biodynamic wine growers. And also, oftentimes we're really curious about this, those 9 preparates or preparations that this is like the famous cow horn that gets stuffed, and then the matter is sort of diamondized and in water. So we'll touch on that as well, but that's kind of the sort of general idea here. And all of this really sort of came out of the thinking of Rudolf Steiner, who was a philosopher, Austrian philosopher, who had different sort of stages of his career, but towards the end of his career was really thinking a lot about farming and ways to get back to very traditional farming practices. He witnessed the effects of the Industrial Revolution throughout his life and delivered a series of lectures in 1924, and it was all about these sort of concepts that we just spoke of, and these concepts would then sort of become this this system of farming known as biodynamics. And so that's just a way we wanted to introduce today's topic, but we're really here to hear from the producers themselves. And to start, we want to hear about Respekt, this group that all of these winemakers that are here today belong to. And I thought there would be no one better to do that than to have Fred Loimer speak about sort of the origins and beginnings of the Respekt group.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Yeah, hello from Austria, hello from Langenlois, from Kamptal, and thank you for getting that possibility to talk a little bit about our work in the field, in the vineyards, in the cellar, and about the group which we founded already 15 years ago. So that time passes by quite quick. So I would say everything started the beginning of the 2000s, 2003, 2004, where a few of us starting to think about farming and the way we farm at that time. And in 2003, 2004, I got in touch with biodynamic as an idea, nothing more. And in 2005, I learned someone, or I met someone who was consulting biodynamics in Europe already. He came from the States. He came from California. He helped Joseph Phelps changing to biodynamics, and he worked at that time for Böcklin Wolf and lived in Zurich. And a friend of mine, Peter Malberg, he's now in the Wachau, and we invited him to Austria. I will always remember that. It was beginning of October in harvest 2005, which was quite difficult harvest. Botrytis, and so he was here, and we were talking about farming in a way, a whole day. And in the evening of that day, I decided to change to biodynamics. So he was so fascinating that this was completely clear for me. We should change, but as a consultant, it was not so easy to do that alone. So I asked a few, and Gernot Heinrich was one of them, if he has also interest in that. And so we two, me here in Langenlois and Gernot in Gols, we created 2 school classes with Andrew Laurent. That was the name of the consultant. And this was end of 2005, and from these 2 groups, almost all of us start changing to biodynamic in 2006. And in '06 we did that without any certification, without any organization. It was more two groups and learning month by month about biodynamic as a group, and then also in the wineries. And in '07, we learned in '06 that when you talk about biodynamics and when you talk about organic farming, it has to have a control system, a certification at the end. This is law. You can't talk about I work organic without any certification. This is clear. It's important for the consumers at the end that they have to be safe, that what you talk about is real. And so in end of '06, beginning of '07, we start thinking about getting certification. And of course, there is Demeter First. That's the address for biodynamics in the world. It's the oldest foundation and the oldest association for biodynamics. And so we got in touch with them, but we didn't feel so comfortable at that time, to be honest. They also changed a lot here in Austria in the last 15 years, but at that time we didn't feel comfortable. And so we decided to do our own thing. And the own thing get named in 2007. And this was Respekt. And at the beginning, it was Respekt inspired by biodynamics. And it started as an association for teaching, for consulting, for taking seminars, so to learn about biodynamics from the base and up, and also to meet on a monthly base or even more. And 1 year we meet as a group to learn and to share our thoughts, to share our experiences we already had at that time. And in 2009, Respekt got also a certifying body, which wasn't before. But in 2009, we decided to make Respekt also to a label, to a certification body for biodynamics. And in the meantime, I would say also Demeter improved. Just to give you an idea, when we started, Demeter, or the anthroposophic scene, had some troubles with alcohol still at that time. And today, 90% of all Demeter certified farms in France are wineries. So they improved a lot in the last 15 years. And so today, Respekt is honored in the world of biodynamic, I would say, and is also working very close together with Demeter. Especially there's a biodynamic group, an association in Donach in Switzerland, and they do a lot of lobbying work in European Union and in the world for biodynamic, and we join them, and I would say we work close together. And Respekt in these last 15 years was growing. At the beginning, we were around 13, I guess, 13 wineries. 95% in Austria. There was one from, or there is still one from Alto Adige. It's Maninkor, and Michael Enzenberg is our president. And there's one in Hungary, and since 5 or 6 years now, there is a group also in Germany with 6 estates at the moment, and we will grow. But the big difference between Demeter and Respekt today is that Respekt is only certifying wine growers. It's easier for us to be honest. So we don't know so much about the rest of farming. Of course, we are interested in, and we are happy that two members of Respekt are also Demeter certified. So there's a good connection to Demeter today. But we as Respekt, we said it's easier for us only to certify wine, to get specified in a way for wine, and to certify only wineries which are thinking in a similar way on the quality side. So it's important that you're not only working biodynamic in the field and have a biodynamic thinking, how you work and live. It's also very important that the quality at the end of the wines has a certain level. It has to have a good individuality and a very good quality level. Otherwise, you can't get certification of Respekt.
And Fred, I just put up the a slide with all of the current members, 25 members of the Respekt group, and I'll put that up again in just a moment. But Pam is asking a question here about whether you have to pay. The question is, I'll just read it. What are the advantages of being a wine-based group rather than being Demeter certified? And does Respekt have to pay Demeter to use the term biodynamic?
No, because biodynamic is only a description of a way of farming. And so it's only in the States where biodynamic is a trademark. And we hope that the International Biodynamic Association in Dornach will find a way to open that also for us in the States to use biodynamic on the labels. But at the moment it's not possible because it's a trademark there. But in the rest of the world, biodynamic is a free term. So it's possible to use it. But we are working at the moment together with Demeter International to get some, let's say, basic rules and basic guidelines for the term biodynamic. So it's not absolutely free that everyone can use it without any certifications. So there should be some rule work or some guidelines in the back, but we don't have to pay Demeter, but we make a commitment with Demeter International that we will pay for lobbying work in the European Union, so that we also be part about that we not only use biodynamic, so we also pay for lobbying work, but not for the term biodynamic.
Thank you for that answer, Fred. I wanted to hand it over to Fritz Wieninger because Fritz, you and I have had some funny, interesting conversations about how you have come to biodynamics. I think it maybe would be fair to say you were skeptical a little bit, but you have embraced it as much as anyone in this group. So this next little part of the presentation is all you, Fritz. Can you help us understand how you came to this way of thinking and this approach in your vineyards?
Sure. Well, for me, definitely it was the case that I was trained very technical, and I believed in the modern developments what were necessary, as my teachers at winemaking college taught me. And so I worked. Also my father, who trained me, I think he trained me well. He was more in the more modern way, and this modern way meant to be following the rules of the chemical industry, and as more modern technology as possible is to use as little handwork as possible. This is the future. Until a year, actually the same year, 2005. I did not attend this group, but I also had this year strong in my mind because 2005 as a difficult year showed me somehow that with our conventional farming methods, we got into a dead-end street, and this doesn't lead to success anymore. I started even to see in the vineyards what we made wrong, or how strong the impact of the spraying was. And I was looking for a way out of this, a way of alternatives. And I found a friend in Vienna, a Demeter certified wine grower, Stefan Heisan, who helped me to change or switch 5 hectares of my vineyards into biodynamic treatment. I had absolutely no idea what was going on or what he did, but I thought I want to see how this is changing my vineyards, how the work would be, how the costs would be, how the quality of the grapes would be, and at the end, of course, what is the most important, how the quality of the wine would be. And after these 2 years, 2006 and 2007, I saw that, well, all I heard from these great teachers of the universities and colleges for wine growing were nice stories, but not really the truth, because the work was not really more. It was the same as you have to do it in a good quality treatment, is the same kind of work you have to do with the biodynamic work in the vineyard. And on the other side, the yields did not drop down by 50% or something. No, well, a little bit here down, a little bit up there, as it is used when you work with nature. It's not always the same. It depends on the vineyard, it depends on the vintage. So for me, after these 2 years, there was this question, so what do you want to see now? You saw 2 years of changes. All the changes were in the right direction. Wines of more character, wines of more interesting taste. So let's get certified. And well, the rest is, I made this course or seminars with Andrew, who was a splendid translator of the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner. A guy you probably cannot understand just like this. I tried to read books. I read books, but I needed to read them 2 times, 3 times. And I didn't understand as much as I understood during these seminars. This opened my eyes, and for me it was clear, or there was the question, why didn't I do that before? Why did I need so long to step into this? This is what I want. This is much less esoteric as I thought before. This is much more based on hard facts. This is working with nature the right way.
Yes, and I just put that quote from you, Fritz, that you said, I'm not an organic junkie, I'm doing this for quality, and I'm achieving quality through biodynamics. I love that quote from you. Yes, from all of our conversations, you never do anything halfway, Fritz. You always go, if you're going to do it, you do it always 100% in the right way.
Yes, well,
Dave, oh, sorry, Fritz, go ahead.
I think this is necessary. If you decide to do something, you shouldn't think about it too much. Just do it. Jump into it. The water is much less cold than you think before. If you don't go this path, you never find out what advantages you have at the end of that street. And well, there is no end of that street. It's a long street, and it's a path in reality. But the most important thing is I am happy with my decisions. I am happy with the quality in my bottles, in my glasses. What I do today is what I really was looking for. If everybody likes this is a different question, but I like it, I'm happy. And as long as I am happy, I think I will find enough other people that are also happy with this kind of quality, and that's fine.
First, I have to say thank you, Fred. You're taking care of the Q&A, it looks like, so thank you. I appreciate that. And Fritz, I thought I would ask you this question. Dave wrote me via email. He had a question about have you identified any vintage trends that you attribute to climate change, and do you believe biodynamic farming helps your vineyards adapt to these trends of climate change?
I think definitely I can say yes to this question. I think biodynamic farmed vineyards are much more in balance, and balance is the key thing of today facing this climate change. There is droughts, and these vineyards don't look that bad because they are more fit, there is more humus, there is deeper roots going into the soil and sourcing other horizons with water or nutrients. I definitely believe that biodynamic farming is the right answer on the challenges of today. Climate change doesn't mean that it just gets warmer every year. The warmer is the one thing, the drier is the other thing. There is a lot of effects, and I think that the vineyards, how we treat them, are much better in these sometimes chaotic vintages or seasons than other vineyards. I can see it when I look to my neighbors with their conventional ideas, opening, plowing the soil, using chemical fertilizers. This leads only to more kilograms per hectare, but not to more success, not to better quality of grapes, and of course not to better quality of wines. What we are doing is for sure the better idea.
Thank you, Fritz, for that answer. Gernot, I'm going to move on to you because this idea of farming as a closed system is so important to the whole concept of biodynamic farming. And you and Heike work so much with animals on your farm, and I thought you'd be the perfect person to sort of help us understand this concept of farming as a closed system and why that is so important to you. Let's see, Gernot is.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
I would like to put a few sentences of Andrew, our consultant, in the beginning. And he made a definition of biodynamics, and that says biodynamics tries to follow the ideal of the whole farm system to become self-sustaining, self-healing, and self-feeding. I think this is actually quite a modern concept of farming, and implementing, I think, all these organic substances which we are producing. I mean, we still have a lot of input, of course. We need energy, and we need also some plant protection. But of course, there is a maximization, I think, of our own resources in our farm. And I think it's important to develop this feeling for these substances. I don't think I had that before we started with biodynamics. So it was kind of a developing process over the years. And in the end, it was very logical for us to implement also the sheep into our farm. And I thought it will be very difficult, but in the end, it's so easy. First of all, because Heike is taking care of them, and she really loves them. And I mean, the top number of sheep we had in the past was 100. So that was really sometimes hard work. But of course, we're using the sheep manure, and we also do some associated work with farmer friends nearby. So we're using the cow manure from the national park, because Gols is very close to the national park here, Neusiedlersee, and they have about 400 cows running around in the wild nature. And only in winter time they are using the compost, the manure, which we can use then. But also the reed from the lake and some other organic materials, the press residues, what we use for compost, and also the lees, the sedimented yeast. It's a perfect nutrition for our wines in the end. And I think it's important to realize that to increase the carbon content in our soil is very important, and it's a major goal for us too. So it's a modern concept of farming, and this 3R concept, like reduce, reuse, and recycle. I think this is it's a perfect concept, which is it fits to biodynamics as well. And I think if it comes to this forces working in a farm on Earth, it's the mineral forces, the etheric forces, the astral forces, and the ego forces. And this sounds very theoretic, but you see on the plant growth and how your vines are behaving that you are increasing the astral forces by working with sheep or other animals. And I think this observing all this processes and cycles going on in nature is a very important goal.
Gernot, we had a question from Johanna, and this gets into winemaking, but I know that you take a lot of your ideas about organic farming and biodynamics, and you want to bring that also into the cellar in the way that you work. And Johanna is asking about how you work on very low levels of sulfur in your wines. So the total sulfur is oftentimes very low. Sometimes you have 0 added sulfur. And she's asking about what practices you implement in the cellar to ensure that the wines are stable or clean. Would you mind just taking a side route here and just talking about winemaking for you for just a second?
I think the most important factor is to have healthy fruit coming in from the vineyard. And biodynamics is helping us to balancing the growth in the vineyards. So we never have really strong growth. And so we bring in this kind of resilience, this natural resilience with the grapes. That means we have thick skin, small berries. And of course, these phenolic elements in the wine, they are stabilizing the wine in a natural way. And it's possible to reduce the amount of sulfur while working in this way. And of course, we do also oxidation of the must to get rid of these unripe phenolic elements. So we do must oxidation, and that helps us in the end to produce a natural reductive wine. Of course, in the beginning, sometimes you have reductive flinty notes in the wine, but it will disappear and it will develop very positive.
Fantastic. Thanks for that answer, Gernot. I wanted to move on to Alex Sattler, because we had actually a couple of questions already for you, Alex, because I think you may have said once that you weren't convinced that biodynamics were for you. I know that you've been working organic for a long time, but to make the jump into biodynamics and joining the Respekt group, the question is what changed for you? And we also had a question about the challenges of working in a biodynamic way in southern Austria and Südsteiermark, where you are located. So this next part is, I'll hand it over to you. Maybe the answers to those questions, but also want you to speak about soil health and biodiversity also.
So thanks very much. So I thought of using, or maybe I can use the questions to actually dig into this topic of soil health and biodiversity, because that was basically the major change of thought that we had in the couple of last years in our estate and in the head of myself, my brother, and my parents. So I'm working in an estate in the third generation now. We are taking over a big evolution that has gone through the winery. I think nothing is stable. Everything's changing, and we can feel that right now very much. So for us, we had a time when we would say it's not possible to work organic in Southern Styria. We thought in our quality approach, we cannot maintain the same quality while working organic, because we work in such harsh conditions with a lot of rain, steep hills, only possibility to work by hand. But times have changed. Our idea has changed. Yeah, that's just a picture of us, our employees in the vineyard, like making a new vineyard. But so the things have changed, and we dig deep into this topic. And actually, for us, it started in the early 2000s when we had an at first intern in our estate. He was a sommelier coming to the estate saying he wants to work for half a year to get some experience in winemaking. And then he stayed for 6 years at my father's place. He was a big fan of Nicolas Joly back then. And he was the first to, before we were coming into contact with organic farming, we got the influences of him of biodynamic farming. And we were at that time in the state of mind where we say it's not even possible to work organic. So he changed a little bit the idea, the possibilities. We saw in practice that it works. And the thing we saw at most was the compost. So he had his own compost pile back then. We had our normal compost pile. So although we were not organic, we were already not using herbicide and working with compost. And we saw that this compost pile with biodynamic approach just worked much better. It was making the vineyard more healthy and making it more stable. And so we started thinking, and when we start thinking, it takes a long time for us to come into thought with something. And that's how our vineyards look like today. So a lot changed in the last years. We see our vineyards right now more than ever as a living organism. And Gernot already told a little bit about the connection of the animals with the soil that you can bring through humus, through compost or through animals directly. And we found that this living soil, the living things that go on in the vineyard, that they are actually playing a big role in sustaining a great and healthy crop, healthy grapes that are very resistant to these harsh conditions of our area. So the thing that I learned in school when I finished school in 2011, it's not that long ago, we had a completely different mindset in learning about soil and learning about the stuff that goes on in the vineyard. So when I was in school, we learned you get a plot of land and you drill holes inside and you see what's the nitrogen, what's the phosphor, what's the magnesium, like the elements. And the thing that changed our thinking the most was not just the friendship with all of the people that sit here and that have a lot in advance in this way of thinking, but the thing that changed most was coming together with a scientist working in microbiome science that told us that this idea of school that we learned was just the halfway of a soil that you can see it. And the other halfway is just the microbiome of each plot of land that you see that is not analyzed in a single way in modern science. So that was a thing that we really put into consideration when we think about biodynamic practices, biodynamic thinking, that leads to a greater diversity in soil of microbiome, of stuff that you don't see, that you can actually see the results of, where you can see that the wines are growing healthier, they are growing more stable. And that was one of the steps that came in between us, where we would say, this really makes sense in a like when you think as a person that's very skeptical, this makes a lot of sense. And when you start to think in this direction and dig deeper in the practices that go along with the cycles of nature, and also there's a big stuff we could talk about this for hours. I think there's a lot of stuff that actually makes sense, although you wouldn't learn it in your school. And that was making us thinking. If a leading scientist tells us this is right, although we learned it's wrong, then you should think a little deeper in the topic. And so it's everything about diversity in soil that's making our wines more stable in the region, in the harsh conditions. So the diversity in soil comes from the connection of plants, animals, and these microorganisms, and to get a balanced combination of these three, it's a great way to go with biodynamics. And that was the basic idea that I see. Yeah, and we are very much vineyard people in our family, so we really want to have healthy, self-sustaining vineyards. And the other extreme would be if you fertilize with liquid fertilizer, like a artificial fertilizer. That would be the classical approach where you say you lack of nitrogen, you want to have a bigger crop. If you put nitrogen there through the water, the wine takes it up in the system and it produces more grapes. And it actually works like that, but it's like feeding your children only with sugar so that you get the most energy out. It doesn't work in a long term. At some point, the people will get sick and the land will get sick if you do it with fertilizer. And so you have to feed the microorganisms with animal manure in whatever way possible, and plants there, besides wines, like different diversity of plants, to get the greatest perspective in long-term development of microorganisms. And this scientist, she told us there's a one thumb rule in this whole study: the more the merrier. So the more different microorganisms you have, the better it is, because they keep it in balance, and you don't get you get a little bit rid of problems that come along the way otherwise. So.
Thank you, Alex. We've gotten a lot of questions about the preparates. It's always a popular topic when it comes to biodynamics. I noticed Pam asked some great questions early on. Maybe Fred or Fritz, you've already answered a few of these questions, but can we discuss these for, we have maybe 15 minutes left, discuss some of these preparates, how they're applied in the vineyard. Maybe should I hand that over to you, Gernot, to speak about these preparations, 500, 501? I'm going to ask him to unmute here.
Always the same old story. Yeah, the two major field spray preparates, 500 and 501, both are buried in this horn you saw in the picture, but we are not using these big ones anymore because we realized that the smaller ones are much better. You're getting the better quality of cow manure, and the cow manure preparate is you're using.
You mean the horn itself? You're using a smaller?
Yeah, because this horn you can see here, it's quite a long one, and those are coming from the gray cows here in the national park. But we prefer to use smaller ones because it's converting much better in a smaller with a smaller amount of cow manure. When you fill it. It doesn't have the best smell in the beginning, but when you dig it out in spring, then it smells like forest soil. So it's really converted. It's like a miracle every year. And the horn is taking this cosmic astral forces I was talking about previously, and it's digging into the ground. We dig it into the ground over the winter month, because the energy of the earth and everybody knows that. It's warm if you go down about a meter into the earth, and then it still can happen that all the animals are alive there. The worms and everything, they're going down to 1 meter into the earth. And that's also the place where the converting of the cow manure to this preparate takes place. And this we do over the winter time. And the silica preparate, the 501 preparate, we produce over the summer month. So it's fine grounded crystal of the mountains, silica. And we also dig it in the ground from March to September. And then you see the process of dynamization here. We use just a homeopathic amount of this material. And we are transmitting our consciousness, our spiritual forces to this preparate, which is very important. And in a perfect way that you do it, the stirring by hand over an hour. And you're forming this kind of vortex to the bottom of this pot. And I think this is also kind of a meditation process when you do it early morning.
And so then the preparations 500, 501, these are the ones that are dynamized in water, and they're applied to the vineyard as a spray?
Yes, 500 you're spraying in big drops on the ground, just for build up this living in the soil and to enhance the microorganism or the microbiome Alex was talking about. And that's the process we're doing in a few weeks when everything starts to grow outside to support all these growing processes in spring. And we do 2 to 3 sprayings from April to July or to end of June. And then we start with 501, the silica preparate. And it's the preparate of the light forces. It's collecting the sunlight, the light forces, and it's spread over the leaves. And it's also protecting the vines against fungi because it's drying out the surface a little bit. And it's balancing the growth processes and the ripening processes.
And then I grouped the others together just because they're applied to the vineyard through compost, but they all, of course, have a different purpose. And maybe we could ask who would like to maybe explain a few of these. Fritz, Alex, Fred? I'll call on you, Fritz.
I didn't understand the question because I was just looking at the chat and
the Q&A
questions there. Can you repeat?
Yes, I was just wondering, with the preparates 502 through 508, these are the ones that are applied to the vineyard through compost. And could you, I know each of those serves a different purpose, but could you explain maybe the way you prepare those and what purpose they serve?
Well, I think I am the wrong one on this because I'm buying these preparates and I'm using them for my compost, but I'm not producing them myself. Maybe one of in the group produces them himself.
Well,
that's for sure easier to
well, we have a picture here of Gernot working with stinging nettle. So Gernot, can you explain what we're looking at?
In this case, it's just a nettle tea which we are spraying on the soil. Most of the time we're combining it with the preparate 500, which is perfect for me to do it in this way. But I think the very important compost preparates, we can mention them. It's the oak bark, the chamomile, the yarrow, the stinging nettle, the dandelion, and the valerian preparate from 502 to 507. And these are quite complicated to produce. And every single preparation of them, they have a relationship to calcium, to nitrogen, to phosphor, potassium. So they are responsible for different processes. But in the end, they are kind of balancing everything, and they are kind of mediators. You can call them mediators of all the forces going on.
Excellent, thank you. And like I said, the reason I grouped those preparates together is because they're all applied to the vineyard through compost. I think that's a photo that you gave us, Fred, of compost that you use in your vineyards.
Yes, but we changed our way of composting a little bit. At that time, this was the first year, I think, 07 or so, where we only made layers and then started the process and let it like it is and wait for a year. Today we steer it almost every week when the process is started, and with that technique we get a much better compost today, more cleaner, more harmonized, and much easier to bring in the field. So we changed it a little bit, but we still have at the end of the process straw on top to protect the compost while it's sitting, to get a higher quality.
I have to say thank you to Fritz and Fred for helping me with the Q&A. That would have been way too many questions for me to answer. I do notice one here from David, and he's asking if there's any scientific evidence that biodynamically treated composts have any advantage over their organically treated counterparts.
There is sorry for that. There is in Geisenheim a vineyard since 2006, run by Georg Meissner. They divided that vineyard in 06 in 3 parts: conventional farmed, organic farmed, and biodynamic farmed. And the difference from organic farming to biodynamic farming are only the preparates. So using compost with preparation and using the field preparates, and they could measure differences. They could measure differences in the growth itself. So it's very, very interesting to see the length of the shoots are shorter in the biodynamic field, but the weight of the wood is the same as in the organic. And also the amount of worms, for example, is the same organic and biodynamic, but the diversity of the worms is higher in the biodynamic. So there is for sure an influence of the preparates.
Thank you, Fred. And we have a question for you, Gernot. Are you using alternatives to copper sprays in the vineyard due to the sheep? Could you touch on that? That comes up a lot, the use of coppers in organic and biodynamics, but I'll have you speak to that.
We are reducing the copper amount year by year, and I mean, we have the great advantage that we are in a very dry area, so downy mildew is not the biggest issue. But of course, in years like 2010 or 2008, in the very beginning of our biodynamic treatments, it was difficult, and we're spraying horsetail tea that helps also and can replace copper. But we try to stay between 1 kilogram, 1.5 kilogram per hectare per year, and in dry years it's sometimes even less. Yeah. So we are learning year by year.
And you have to know, today we're using 1.5 to 2 kilos, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. but European Union is allowing 4 kilograms at the moment, and only 2 years ago it was 6 kilograms in France and Italy and Spain, and in the very past, so 60 years ago, it was 30 kilograms they were using and more. So we're talking about really very little, and so far as I know, it's not a problem for the sheeps, the amount we are using today. And anyway, they are not in the vegetation period in the field, because they would damage, or they would harvest earlier as we would harvest, and so they are coming in the fields, in the vineyards after harvest, when a lot of the leaves are already fallen down on the soil.
I love this. Oh, sorry, Gernot, go ahead.
And I think that if there is a problem with copper, it's coming from the past. As Fred was mentioning, I think it was much more copper used, up to 10, 15 kilograms. And so sometimes there is still a lot of copper in the topsoil. And so the cover crops, they are taking the copper also. And then if sheep are eating it, you can have a problem. But we don't have any problems.
I love this question from Maria. She's asking if any of you have noticed a difference in the longevity of your wines since switching to biodynamic farming. Interesting question. Does it make a difference in terms of their life, the wine's longevity?
I think there is a very positive effect because of this fine tannin structure, fine grained tannin, which is keeping the wine in a perfect shape for a long time. And of course, our yield is much lower than it was 20 years ago, because we had much more vigorous wines and less concentration in the wine. And so the aging potential was not that good at that time, I think.
Fritz,
I think
oh, go ahead, Fred.
I think you have a much better physiological ripeness in biodynamic vineyards. This is very easy to see for everyone when you walk through. And because of that, and because of spontaneous fermentation, you get a higher complexity of the wines. And that's why these wines are much longer living as conventional wines, for sure. Yeah.
Fritz,
even with very low sulfur.
Did you have a comment on that, Fritz?
Well, I'm not sure about it, but as Gernot says, if you do this really serious and compare it to a farming method with chemical fertilizers and higher yields, of course, these wines will age much better and will be fresh and young much longer. But I'm more with Fred. I think the biggest difference is the more multi-layered characteristics of the wines, and also the better physiological ripeness. That means that the fruit is mature with lower sugar content. I saw that in my beginnings of switching over to biodynamics, that suddenly I didn't need to wait that long to get physiological maturity, and ended up with lower alcohol. And this is a key question in the climate change, that we are able to harvest a bit earlier than before, because if you have to wait until the last possible day, you will have the light wines with 14 plus alcohol, and only that they are really mature from the tannins and so on. And this is what absolutely nobody wants, not we and not you out there. And that is for me the biggest effect by the biodynamic farming.
Alex, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, maybe I just wanted to say, because we had the experience when a friend of ours, he was building his cellar. We had 1 year where we had got the fruit from him to make it in our cellar and give it back to him, because he didn't have a cellar. And so I was able to taste the same area, the same village with organic. I cannot tell for biodynamic because we're too short in it, but for organic at least, I could tell that analytically his wine would have been more ripe. He had more sugar. He harvested it, although he harvested it earlier than our grapes. But when you tasted it, the tannin structure was completely missing. And I think that's something that has to do with the amount of skin in a berry. Like the berries, they get a little smaller. Gernot already told about it. The berries get smaller, they get a little bit more loose. They don't get pushed against each other too much when you worked in a like sustained yield. So I could tell that the structure of the wine was pushing more in the direction of long living of long aging.
Fantastic. We've had so many great questions from our audience. We tried to get to as many of those questions. The panel has given us an hour of their evening, and we used every minute of it. So we really appreciate your time. I want to thank the panel, Fred Leumer, Fritz Wieninger, Alex Sattler, and Gernot Heinrich. Hopefully we answered most of those questions. If there's any that we missed, we will get back to those in writing. But thank you to all of you for your time and for helping us learn about biodynamics and the Respekt group. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.